Okay, wait for a few minutes to attendees to join in, and it's live on Facebook as well.
Are we live now?
Yes.
Should we start? We're just going to wait for a couple of minutes for people to join in.
Yes, please.
Okay.
5 more minutes, please.
No worries. We'll just hang out here and smile. Looks like we've some people joining in. I think we should start now. I think hopefully we have some people who have joined in. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Aparna Zalani. I'm here with Kieran Moss. On behalf of Southlake Foundation, we'd really like to welcome all of you today. We also want to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Lane Ledbetter, our superintendent of Carroll ISD School District. We're excited to have him here.
Thank you.
We hope that this event is informative and educational for folks at home, and we really appreciate your time this morning. We know it's a very difficult time for our country, indeed the global community, but we really appreciate you taking time out of your day, particularly on a Saturday away from your family, to speak to the community, because the students and teachers and staff are extremely excited to hear from you, and we just wanted to say thank you, sir, in advance.
Before we begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Southlake Foundation. It was established by Southlake residents. The foundation has held several public informational events, including candidate forums, meet and greets, webinars, and on topics such as the coronavirus, race relations, small business growth, among other things. The foundation also strives to bring cheer to our CISD staff and the city staff, fire department, police department, sanitation department by bringing lunch, snacks, and donuts. The foundation also conducts schoolyard cleaning initiatives every fall each year. It also organizes the big cultural event every year. The Diwali Fest in Town Square is one of the biggest ones. I'm sure you all have heard about it. The foundation operates on the principles of promote, participate, and progress. We promote giving back to our community that we live in. We want to make sure we have participation, and we want to make ourselves available for community service. And we hope to progress towards making Southlake a better place to live in for everyone.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction to the Southlake Foundation. And again, thank you for inviting me today. I'm very honored. Thank you. Dr. Ledbetter, if we could start with the first question, sort of a generalized background question. We would love to know what brought you into the field of education. I know that your dissertation was on leadership. We know that you're from Southlake. We know you were valedictorian here. But what was it that you think led you back to wanting to pursue education and become an educational leader when you were in school?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with my foundation here in Southlake and the Carroll schools, but also, I grew up in a family of educators. So both my mom and dad were teachers, and grew up in that environment my whole life. And so, when I went to college, it was kind of one of those things that's what I knew, and it was kind of, you think about other opportunities, other things that you want to pursue. But then growing up, I continued to see the impact that my mom and dad had on the students I worked with, but then also, just even my own friends and the impact they had on people that I was close to. And so, everyone I would expect or think wants to go into an environment, to a career where you feel like you're making a difference and you're serving people, and you feel like that you're benefiting others. And so it was one of those things I probably, in some respects, maybe tried to resist it a little bit, but then at the end of the day, I realized that that's really where I needed to be, because I knew that that was something that I could do and hopefully make a difference in my career. And so really, I think it was really the impact of my mom and dad. And of course, then you reflect on that and you think back, all of us probably had teachers or coaches or individuals in our childhood that had an impact on us. And so you can think about that as I thought about that going into a career to make a difference. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Dr. Ledbetter, diversity is a celebrated subject, yet right now in our city, it's become quite divisive. I know you cannot talk about the CCAP because of the legal issues, but can you tell us from your experience in diversity training at other school districts you work at, what has worked and what didn't?
So, I think every community and every school district is different. I think it's based upon the makeup of the community. It's based upon the makeup of the district itself and the values of that community and what the expectations are. But so, I've been in other districts that have, done some trainings and different things. And I think, I think that the main thing is that I think our goal would always be to give kids to serve children in ways that give them the skills to be compassionate towards others. I think for me, that's it. It's about our kids being compassionate. It's about our teachers being compassionate. It's about always providing equity and access. And so as I think about what's worked in other districts versus what's going to work here, I feel that it's vitally important that we leverage the community as part of that process. And I think you've heard me talk about listening to our community and bringing individuals together and really getting a feel for what this community wants and needs to do moving forward. I've said several times, it's not going to be my plan. I'm not going to personally solve this problem. It's going to be a unified effort in working with our mayor and our city leaders to bring this together and to listen. And I really believe, from a listening standpoint, I feel like I've been able to do that in some respects in other districts that I've been in. And I think it's important that we create a listening culture in Carroll ISD and the community of Southlake so that we value all perspectives and all opinions. And I think that philosophy of, my philosophy has always been, you have to listen to understand. And I've been doing that a lot lately. I think a lot of people listen so that they can respond immediately or have a response to that and an action to follow. But I think we have to listen to truly understand and then bring everyone together to create what will work for this community and this district as a whole, and find that common ground. What is that common ground going to be that we can all support and rally around and continue to value all of our students and all of our parents and all of our community members?
Thank you, Dr. Ledbetter. The third question that we had, you pretty much touched on some of the components that we were wanting you to look at. It was specifically related to how we would try to put together an agenda that would bring the community together. And I know from your own scholarship and your practice historically, you've looked at situational versus dispositional leadership. So I want to alter the question that we had proposed just a tad. When you talk about dispositional leadership, it's sort of the internal ability to respond to a situation versus situational leadership, which is a trained situation, right? So in military, they'll put people into environments where they can learn the skills of being able to respond to a real war environment. You're walking into both a new environment and you're walking into an environment that has new characteristics. So in other words, if someone was to be on the outside looking in all due respect, this is an extremely difficult situation. So number one, I think one of the unifying themes that we've said is that we acknowledge that you've taken on such a difficult, agenda. But number two, talk to me about what you think maybe some of the situational or dispositional experiences that you've had that you think you might be able to utilize as you look forward to trying to bring us together holistically.
So, I think once again, it kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning. Every community and every staff, every every district is a little bit different. It has unique personality, has unique values. And I think as a leader, you come in and you have to spend some time evaluating that. And that's really what I've tried to do during this first 30 days. And we'll probably continue to do that here for the next few days and weeks. Although I know there's an expectation, and I understand that because there's a limited amount of patience. There's an expectation that we do something, and I understand that. But what I would ask is that as a community that give me a little bit of time to continue to evaluate, to analyze, and really, like you said, kind of determine what is the best approach to take in the community. And of course, there's some other challenges with legal situations as far as what we can and cannot do right now. And believe me, behind the scenes, I am trying to maneuver through that and work through the logistics of that, because I know it's important to this community to get to resolution and to move forward and to celebrate what a great community and great district this is. So when I think back to my other opportunities, other experiences in districts that I've had, in my most recent district, I feel like that this was something we did very well. And once again, please understand, it really didn't have anything to do with me. It was the people that I work with. It was the community that came together. But we were able to really come in and put together a blueprint for what the educational environment was going to look like in that district. We really wanted to transform the learning environment from really a test-driven community about assessment data to really trying to create an innovative and learning environment for our kids and pursue higher level opportunities for our kids while also integrating technology. And so we really created this entire transformation of learning through involving the community. We had community meetings. Of course, we had, with the integration of technology, we had a technology advisory committee that all fed into this one, I guess, larger learning plan that we were able to roll out. Of course, in the midst of that, we also had a bond election. So all of that information fed into that bond election. We looked at really creating a personalized learning environment for our kids. We created personalized spaces in our buildings that we were creating. We had very collaborative learning spaces, of course, maker spaces, which I know are a big portion of what's happening here in Carroll ISD. But all of that then led back to how does the curriculum flow through that, and what is the expectations of our teachers in utilizing those spaces, and then how do we create an aligned curriculum all the way from pre-K up to 12 so that our students are prepared going off to college. And we really worked over the 4 or 5 years that I was there to really create a great alignment process. I had superintendent goals, which then filtered down. We had clear principal goals, principal metrics, which then flowed. They were completely aligned to our campus improvement plans, which then were tied back to our overall strategic plan. So we really worked to create a very consistent alignment process. So we knew the expectations at all levels of the organization. But please know that all that came from a very involved community engagement process with action teams. We had committees that fed into that. Of course, we did a lot of surveys to engage our community, and we had great participation in those. Well over a couple thousand individuals involved in those survey processes to feed into our decision making. So I think it's important that you involve all the stakeholders. You have to get feedback from everyone involved in the process. So when I think about moving forward in Carroll ISD, I think we have the bigger issue right now is the issue that's on the forefront right now, that's on everyone's mind, really has to do with the diversity piece and some of the division. But in reality, the bigger issue in my mind is really defining where we go as a district. What are going to be those priorities moving forward as part of a strategic plan? Because we can't lose sight of the fact that we are an academic educational institution, and we have to put some goals in place that define where our staff is trying to go, as well as where we want our students to go. We cannot be satisfied with where we are as a district. We've got to continue to push the envelope and do the things that we need to do to really prepare our students for that next step. And so we can't lose sight of that in the midst of all the noise that's going on right now with the division in the community. And I said at a board meeting the other night that the division is my priority. Resolving that is important, because I think it's important that people understand that Carroll ISD is a great place and our kids are receiving an excellent education. At the same time, just as important is that we continue to focus on the academic side and what are we going to do to challenge our kids at higher levels. And so with that being said, my goal is to really bring the community together and discuss the bigger issue, but at the same time, start formulating that blueprint moving forward. What is education going to look like in Carroll ISD? And once again, it's not going to me. It's not my decision. It's not going to be my philosophy or my experiences that drive that. I will, of course, be involved in the conversation, but it really needs to be a partnership between our community, our parents, our staff, and also you have to include students in that. I believe student voice is very important. What's happening in our classrooms now? What experiences are our kids having when they go off to college? What can we do to better prepare them? And so those are the things that really excite me, is having those conversations with our staff and our community. And let's look at what are we doing now, which is incredible, and what can we do better to serve our kids, and really get in a room with community, whether it's town hall type situations or whether it's really working together in groups to define that over the next several months. And, I've mentioned at board meetings that, we're going to look at doing a strategic planning process, and we're probably going to roll that out right about the beginning of the school year next year. And, if it were, really my desire would be to start that now. I think that our challenge right now, though, is really to get through some of the division that's happening, and we've got to kind of get a plan for that first before we can really start that process moving forward. But I look forward to having those conversations and talking about how we serve our kids academically as part of that strategic planning process. And so, Dr. Moss, I'm certain that went well off the direction of your question there, but I get excited when I start talking about the academics and the educational aspect of what we're going to do. So
I almost started clapping. I mean, I'm serious. You didn't get off anything. You were on every single agenda item, every single instructional, institutional, research, evaluation, assessment, and program improvement piece that all of us are dying to hear more about. So no, not at all. You're wonderful. Thank you.
All right, that was great. I just want to remind everybody watching, if you guys have questions, please put in the chat box of the Zoom or the Q&A box. We are requesting questions if you guys have any, and we'll try to get them towards the end. I have a question for you, Dr. Ledbetter. In one of your emails that you sent out, you mentioned global leadership as one of the key skill sets required in students to succeed. How do you plan to achieve that in students in Southlake? Obviously, you've just been here a month now, but what's your plan, and what skills should we be teaching our children that we need to do more of?
Well, and I think it kind of, in some respects, that question goes back to a little bit about what I talked about just a minute ago, because, when you think about the world we live in today and how rapidly it has changed, especially for those of us that have been through a variety of experiences in our lives, it's rapidly changing, and we have to prepare our kids to be flexible, to understand a variety of perspectives, to understand how to work not just in Southlake, Texas, not just in the state of Texas or nationally, but globally. And so I think it's important that our kids understand a variety of perspectives. I think when you, and I'm probably not going to get my math right, but when you think about our kids that are entering kindergarten today are going to graduate sometime around, are going to be in the workforce, graduating from college, in the 2040 range, 2042 range. Think about how much time that is, and think about the changes that have occurred just in our lives in that range. Think about what Amazon has done just in the last 5 or 10 years, and the impact that they've had on this world and in the environment that they work in. And you think about, will Amazon even be around in that time? What's it going to look like in 10, 15, 20 years? So, when you think about disruptive changes, you think about the disruption that Amazon created. There's been many disruptions when you look back over time that have forced people to make changes. Look at video streaming and Netflix versus Blockbuster and those kind of things. Blockbuster didn't adapt, and they no longer exist. So what are the things that our kids are going to have to do to adapt and be flexible and think critically? And when you think about global leadership, I think it even goes back a little bit to what we talk about with the diversity piece and understanding a variety of perspectives. Our kids are going to be working with individuals all over the world with different beliefs and perspectives and understandings. And so we have to be willing to understand that and to work with everyone in a different environment, just like we're doing today. I mean, who would have ever thought that we would be doing community meetings via Zoom? But the pandemic has forced us to really pivot what we do in our careers and our businesses. And so many of the people listening today, are probably evaluating their own, not career, but even their own businesses. Can we or should we continue to function in this environment? Do we need to continue to have spaces that we rent or buildings that we host? What does that do to help our bottom line if we can work from anywhere, anytime, any place? And so it's always just been the way of doing things. And so if we can evaluate that based on changes and be flexible, we're probably going to benefit from that in the long run. So I think those are the things that really go back to what I was talking about, engaging our community and our parents to have a conversation about what's the world going to look like when our kids go off to college, especially those kids that are in middle school and even our younger kids. What's the world going to look like to them, and what skills do we need to teach them? The adaptability, the flexibility to be able to go out into a world that we can't even begin to predict what it's going to look like. We couldn't have predicted the world we're in right now a year ago. So we've got to teach those skills that allow them to be flexible and to then, be able to analyze and work collaboratively with individuals and understand a variety of perspectives moving forward. So I hope that answers your question. I can expand on that, but I hope you understand and see that, once again, these are the conversations I love to have and that I want to have with our students and I want to have with our parents about what we can do to help Carroll ISD continue to be on that front line of preparing our kids for the future.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean,
Was that a good wow or is that a bad wow?
That is an A+ wow.
Okay, good.
I mean, this is exactly where and what folks need to understand is that, and this doesn't happen overnight. If you're talking about, and I'm going to lead into the following question, which is about global leadership. I think you've pretty much addressed the components that need to be identified as we're talking about evaluation of what it is that are the skill sets and the learned important values of the knowledge base that we want students to be able to know and understand and be competent at being able to do when they leave CISD. Now, we can talk about math, science, technology, engineering, the arts, but at the end of the day, one of the reoccurring themes, and this is not a new theme, but I think more traditionally it's been in the academic realm, maybe in the higher education domain. But more recently, we're seeing a lot of discussion about how do we construct global leadership and global leaders in our K through 12 environment and what that looks like. And so one of the questions that we sort of arrived at is, how do you plan to achieve a component of global leadership in Southlake? What do you think are the fundamental components that we need to have our students know more about? But again, I think you already answered it. We can't answer it until we do the evaluation, assessment, and program review and pulse the stakeholders. And so I guess I'm asking a question you've already eloquently answered, but if there's anything you'd like to address and add on your discussion with regards to that, please.
Well, I think the only thing I would add is, yes, we have to continue to teach the basics, the things that are going to prepare our kids. But yes, as when you think about global leadership, I'll just give a couple of examples, which I'm very excited about in previous opportunities I've been in, is that we really looked at what are those skill sets, and these are probably even more, probably even not future focused enough, but we created a cybersecurity program for our kids, just trying to offer opportunities that we felt like might drive kids to an area that maybe we haven't focused on in the past. So looking at some of our academies, I know we have a great medical academy, but our STEAM situation, we're adding the arts as part of that to give kids opportunity to explore other areas. But I think within those programs, we can look expanding and say, what are those areas that will really help prepare our kids for global leadership? What are some, I guess some programs of learning, I don't know whether it's academies or strands that we can build in to really focus on that global leadership. I know we also worked on, in my previous experience, an entrepreneurship program, I think which is so vital to get our kids thinking about, okay, so how can I, how do I put my thoughts into words? How can I market myself? How do I go after building a business plan? How do I reach out to the community and partner with the community? And I think it's so important that we bring the community into our schools and that we partner with them. And so looking at programs to where we can bring in experts in the field to help get our kids thinking that direction and how you apply the learning, not necessarily learning math and science and those type of things, just in in a rote situation, but to really apply that learning. And so how do we bring the experts from the field in to work with us? And so that's what I was so excited about, the entrepreneurship program that we were able to bring in. And once again, please know, these are not all done. They're not me. It's a great collaboration with our community and the staff that I was fortunate to work with there to bring some opportunities in for our kids. And so kids doing some amazing things. And I think that's what we have to look at is our kids, our young adults that are in our school district are they want it. They can thrive in this environment, and to really allow them opportunities to apply what they already know and understand to help push them forward. So those type of programs we can evaluate. And I'm not saying it has to be, cybersecurity or entrepreneurship, but really thinking outside the box is what can we bring in? How do we partner with the tremendous people in this community? We've already talked about what a great community is and how the number of experts we have here and the well-educated community we have. We've got to utilize that experience and that expertise to help our kids grow as we move forward. I know we've got some great programs in place, so I'm not speaking of anything that we have, but I do think we can't be satisfied with where we are either. We have to continue to push and continue to provide opportunities for our kids.
Thank you, Dr. Ledbetter. We have audience questions coming in. This is from Sydney Kale. She says, CISD is unique in that we have a large population of gifted and talented students. What is your vision for supporting this program to ensure these students are served and our district is competitive?
Well, first I will answer with a very generic answer and say that without a doubt, I'm here to serve all kids. And so we have to serve all kids, regardless of where they are. Our goal is to help all of our kids grow individually and provide them an education that allows them to maximize their potential. But if we're talking specifically about gifted and talented, once again, 30 days in, I'm going to have to say that it goes back to what Dr. Moss and I mentioned just a minute ago. We've got to evaluate our current situation, and we've got to get some real data on understanding where we are with our gifted and talented program. And I'll be honest with you, if you asked me to tell you exactly how we are serving all of our kids right now, I can't tell you that. I can tell you that we'll evaluate that, and if there are ways to improve, then we want to implement those as well. And so I think it comes back to working with staff, working with parents, and seeing what we can do to maximize the opportunities that our gifted and talented students have. And so I will commit to that. I know you want a more specific answer than that, to say, here's what we're going to do, and I would love to lay out my plan for that. I think that will come over time, and I think probably what will come up within our within our strategic planning process is that we will identify approaches and strategies to ensure that all of our student groups are maximized in their potential, even from our special programs to all of our gifted and talented and all the other programs that we have. So just know that I'm committed to looking at that, and we will do the best that we can to ensure the best program that we can offer. And once again, I didn't hear the name. I mean, I heard the name. I don't recall the name that asked that question, but we'd love those that have an interest in that to please be involved in the process as we move forward.
That was Sydney Kale, by the way.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have another question, and this is something that's very important for sort of the whole entire K-12 system, specifically as it relates to new pathways that are being established. Many of these have sort of been emergent and somewhat funded by Bloomberg. So I consult to the National Association for Secondary School Principals. One of their sub-branches is the National Honor Society, the National Junior Honor Society. Up until COVID, I would go and travel and do guest lectures with 500 to 1,000 principals from around the country. One of the emergent themes that we started discussing on the past page last November, December, and January was that during these lectures, I was having an opportunity to start talking with some of the admissions directors, specifically Johns Hopkins or Stanford, or some of the more of the East Coast schools. And what the admissions directors were telling me were that there were significant pipeline changes that were occurring to the transfer process. And it was being spearheaded based on the types of conflict that we saw occurring around standardized measures for intellect. So traditionally, as you know, that would mean the SAT and the ACT. And there was several lawsuits that were brought forth in California against the University of California and the chancellors for each of those 10 campuses. The argument is as such. Basically, because everybody, for the most part, has a 4.0, that we can no longer use GPA as a standard measure to evaluate students nationwide. Secondly, that standardized measures such as the SAT or the ACT, because they can be trained to or taught to, that they discriminated inherently against lower socioeconomic status students. Bloomberg had made an initiative about 3 years ago and actively pursued T1, Tier 1 university admissions and made it clear to chancellors and presidents that he would augment the cost and create social support programs, whereupon universities could be incentivized to drop the standards from traditional measures of academic performance and college readiness, such as the ACT, SAT, and move to more of a holistic qualitative assessment of students. I actually think that these are good variables, right? There's nothing wrong with increasing the number of students who have an opportunity to go to higher education and be successful. Here's the caveat. What we have started to see occur in the data, and again, this is just data point 1, so I'm not trying to make a huge generalization, but what I can tell you is that anecdotally, not just in Texas, not just at CISD, but nationwide, what the murmur is, what the undercurrent is that there is, in this year's cohort of incoming freshmen, a drop-off in the number of people who are high SES students, who are high SES students, and rather those that have lower GPAs, lower SATs, but are stemming from low socioeconomic groups are given priority. So we've just seen a scatter plot that was created recently just for the University of Texas as an example. And we're starting to see that students from the privates and high performing, high SES school districts are not being admitted anywhere near the same amount that they have been historically, specifically over a 10-year trend. That's a big mouthful, and apologies, and I hope that wasn't too much. What I can ask you is, are you aware of any programs that are in place at other campuses, not CISD, because this is something that you're going to have to develop as the time comes and is developable, right? Have you heard of any types of programs where K-12 environments are networking more effectively with their surrounding districts that are lower socioeconomic status, and thereby creating pathways to signal to top-tier universities, our students are not only contributing to their community, but they're working with low SES students in constructive and effective global leadership roles, thereby hoping that they can jump over the new trend that we're seeing that's identified in the admission standards.
So that was a long, do you mind repeating that question? I'm just kidding.
With the phone call interruption and everything, sure. Yeah.
So that there's a lot of information there. And I know, once again, I know you want specific answers to that question. And I think it's one of those trends that I think we've looked at over the last several years in terms of testing and accountability and high stakes testing, and what clearly identifies a student as prepared to be successful in college. And I think it's really two different, I guess, areas of thought as you move forward. And so to say specific programs right now that I've seen, I can't, I don't know that I can identify districts that are working together, prepare that. All I can say is that it's kind of been the conversation, I think, in the K-12 environment over the last several years is how do we prepare all kids to go off and to be successful in college. But at the same time, once again, I think we have to honor and value those top tier kids so that it's not at the expense of what they're doing. But I don't know the question is, what measures do we utilize to identify that? And I think there's, even and philosophically, I will be honest with you, I've been involved in some, conversations about high stakes testing in K through 12, because I think we all would admit that all kids are different and that kids demonstrate their intellect in different ways. And not every child is successful on a high stakes multiple choice test. And so there are some kids that struggle with your SATs, your ACTs, your STAR tests that we have in K-12. And so does that mean that those kids cannot go on then and be successful in college? Absolutely not. But we put so much pressure on these kids in some respects with high stakes testing that some may miss out on that opportunity to go to college and probably do great things once they get out into the workforce. I'll never forget, I was, as a high school principal, sitting in my conference room one day, and this was way back in right after, I can't remember the exact time frame, probably around 2005, somewhere in that time frame. I was sitting, this was at the time when TEA had just made the decision that if you weren't successful on the end of course exams, then you would not walk with your peers at graduation. It had to be a local decision. And so I was sitting with a young man and his mom and dad, and they were all in tears because this young man was not going to walk with his peers. But at the same time, this student had been a good student through our school, A, B student, maybe, you know, a couple C's or whatever, but had performed well enough to graduate. But because of that high stakes test, he was not going to be able to walk with his peers. Now, I'm not saying I agree with everything related to that, but what I'll tell you is something was wrong with the system. Something's wrong with the system at that point. And so I've been I guess a proponent of moving away from just a one-shot multiple choice test to determine the success of our district and schools. We have to utilize that information. That it absolutely has to be a piece of the information that we use to determine the success of a child, but it does not have to be the sole determiner of whether or not that child is successful, or whether or not that campus is successful, or that district is successful. So I guess I'm really mixed philosophically on what you're saying, because we have to provide for all kids. We're in an environment right now, we have to serve all children, regardless of where they come to us from, and regardless of their academic experience or their intellectual ability. And we have to move them forward to pursue their dreams. And my goal would be that every child, if they choose to go to college, can go and perform well. If they don't, then there's other pathways for kids to demonstrate their excellence or their knowledge and abilities if they choose to do so. So I think it's something we're just going to have to explore as a community and as a group with individuals such as yourself to really dig into how do we offer opportunities and pathways to serve all of our kids. And it may be, I'm certain there are many programs that we can reach out to other districts and really consider as we move forward within Carroll ISD.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for that. So I just wanted to remind people who are watching, if you don't mind putting concise questions. We're getting a lot of questions, and we just want to make sure that we are trying to get everybody in. But, you know, we're going to do something called Fun with Superintendent. So we're going to do our little fun round here, just to take a little break from all the serious talk. We're going to make it much harder for you, Dr. Ledbetter, now.
I'm really concerned at this point. I really think, yeah.
Okay.
I think I'm having internet difficulties. I think it's kind of.
So this is, guys, folks, this is a fun round. Please don't take this, you know, hold it against anyone. This is supposed to be a fun round. The first really tough question for you, Dr. Ledbetter, is what is the address of the CISD building?
So 2400 North Carroll.
Is that correct?
No, ironically, the only reason I know that is because I have some letters here on my desk that for some reason that 2400 stuck out in my mind. So I can look, I can verify that.
Good. The second question for you is Kansas City or Tampa Bay?
I'm gonna go with Kansas City.
Why?
I'm going to go with the quarterback from Kansas City, even though, I mean, obviously we have a matchup between two great quarterbacks. I'm going to go with the younger one at this point.
Okay. Kieran, what's the next question?
Do you prefer texting or talking?
Probably talking.
How many hours of sleep do you need?
Do I need? That's a difficult question because it's probably different than what I actually get. I I would say probably 6 to 7 hours would be good, would be what I need. I'm not confident that I get that all the time.
All right, now this is the toughest question of all, okay? And you have to answer that correctly. I'm kidding.
Okay, okay.
Do you know the difference between a cricket bat and a baseball bat?
So just, I think the cricket bat has a flat side, or maybe it's all flat. Where the baseball bat is round, but I think the cricket is flat. I don't know, maybe totally flat like a paddle. I don't know, but definitely has a flat side to it.
I think that we'll take that. All right, so this is something that we wanted to ask you. I know you went to CISD as a student, you were a student here. What's your favorite memory as a student here at CISD?
Wow. So a lot of great memories. You know, I think it goes back to really why I was so excited to come back to this community, and that is just the tradition that's here. I mean, the unity that's here, the togetherness and the support for the school. So I know this is more sports related, and I know that doesn't appeal to all because we're here for academic purposes. But I recall when I was in school, just especially, you know, we were involved in the state championship games and those kind of things when I was in high school, and just the fact that the entire community went to be a part of that, to support the band, to support our cheerleaders, support our drill team, and just it was almost like, you know, it was, you know, you'd see signs, you know, that turn out the lights when you leave Southlake to go to the game, because we knew everyone in the community was going to go and support the students as part of that. So just seeing that involvement of our community, and that has continued. This community rallies around this school district, regardless of what it is, whether it's athletics, whether it's fine arts, whether it's academics, all of our academic successes that the district has had. Our community is here to support that. So really, that's what I just think the big picture memory of that, just being a part of that, and just the pride that you have of being a Dragon. You know, and I think it's evident today as I make the rounds and talk to parents and community members. It's just people don't realize how special that is and how unique that is for everyone from the moment they walk in the Carroll ISD schools to be a Dragon, you know, and to have that unity, that togetherness. There are very few districts that have that consistent mascot and that consistent tradition all the way down to pre-K through 12. So I think that started way back then. It was in place when I started here, and it just continues.
That's great. So one last question, and then we'll go back to the other questions that we have. If there were 3 wishes that you had for CISD, and if they could come true, what would they be?
Well, that's a great question. 3 wishes for CISD. I would say that our students, number one, continue to feel loved, valued, and appreciated, and receive the best quality education that they can receive. I think that's number one. Our focus, number one, has to be on serving our students, valuing our students and their perspectives. So students are loved and valued, number one. Number two, I would hope that our community would understand that our goal is to come together and provide the best opportunities for our kids. And so, you know, I'll go back to what I said at the very beginning. Hate's probably not the right word. I get frustrated that my focus right now is on this whole aspect of unity and bringing the district together. And so my hope would be that in the next few weeks and months moving forward, that is no longer in the conversation, that we are moving forward focused on the academic expectations, the program expectations, and how we can better serve the students in this district. So that would be my top hope, aspiration for this district. I know I use the word hope, and I've always been told my whole life that hope is not a strategy. You've got to have strategies in place to get there, but my goal would be that. So our kids feeling loved, that we bring the community together. And then the third thing is that just that we have a plan for the next 3 to 5 years for our kids and for our staff and our community that is supported and valued by the community and by the parents, and that this community and our staff will trust that we are doing the right thing for kids, and we're going to continue to be that top school district, not only in the state but in the nation for kids, and that people will continue to want just like they do right now, to continue to want to move to Southlake and be a part of an incredible school district with incredible kids.
Thank you, sir. I want to redirect back to some more of the academic inclined questions. During your tenure as an educational leader, can you think of any special education programs that you participated in the construction of, or you had direct reports that were implementing, that you felt were effective strategies for our special education population?
Specific strategies, that's a difficult question, because once again, I think it goes back to the needs of our kids and what, I don't know that there's specific programs. I'm not a big program person. I don't know that you can bring in programs to truly solve every situation. I do know that we have some challenges from a perception standpoint within our district and how things are being, how our kids are being served and what the direction should be. And so at this point, I don't really want to comment on that, honestly, because I want to have time, very much like I said at the very beginning, to really evaluate where we are as a district from a special education standpoint. So I think mentioning specific programs at this point might create a little bit of concern that we are doing that or not going to do that, because I think it's, like I said, every situation is very unique. So I really need an opportunity to work closely with our staff and to evaluate what the needs are for the district. And once again, I know I'm not answering your question specifically, and I apologize for that, but I really need to sit down with staff and look at what we can do differently to serve the kids in Carroll ISD, because I think it's something that, like I said, is different from every district to district to district.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you a question from one of our viewers. Her name is Roshni. She's saying, I'm curious about how we can continue to infuse innovative thinking with focus on science and engineering during a pandemic where most of the kids have to continue in a DVA setting.
So that's the big question. And I think we're all faced with that. All school districts across the state and the nation is, how do we continue to be innovative in the environment that we're in? And I think it's just something that we have to really sit down and work together to really come up with a strategy to continue to allow our kids to pursue those things. And I absolutely agree, in science, technology, engineering, there are some things we can do innovatively. It's just, how do we do that in a virtual world? And I think we all know that we have incredible teachers in this district. We really do. And I think, but nobody expected a year ago that our teachers would be thrust into this environment, to where now they are teaching in a face-to-face in a virtual environment. And so they've been very challenged to be able to do that effectively. What we have to do as a district is really sit down and decide, moving forward, if we are still faced with this virtual versus face-to-face, how do we continue to improve what we're offering to our kids, and what can we do better, and where do we need to allocate resources to where hopefully our teachers are not having to teach both face-to-face and virtual. I'm not saying that we can do that right now. It's going to come down to, how do we evaluate our current offerings, how do we evaluate our staffing, and then how do we look at the number of kids selecting to remain virtual versus face-to-face and provide opportunities. I know we've got a task force working right now to determine if we are back to some sort of normal, and I hate to use that term, but if we're back to some sort of normal in the fall, but yet we still have students that want to continue with a virtual opportunity or a virtual track, can we offer that, and what does that look like? And so we're evaluating that. And so all that being said, it is difficult, especially in some of our career and technology courses, our science, technology, our engineering courses, which require so much hands-on activity and so much involvement with other students and even the community. It is difficult to do that in a virtual environment. At the same time, if that's the world we're going to be in, we've got to be committed to saying, how can we do that better? We can't just say it can't happen, and so we're not going to look at that, but how do we make that better? And those are conversations we're going to have with staff as we move toward next year. My hope, once again, there's my hope. My hope is that in the fall, we're back to face-to-face instruction as much as possible with our kids, and we can then explore, how do we create more innovative opportunities for our kids. At the same time, it's kind of like I mentioned a minute ago with businesses everyone's evaluating, do we need to pivot? And do we have, brick and mortar businesses and places of work? Well, we have to continue to evaluate that as a school district and as K-12, because I would anticipate many of our colleges with online learning have seen that it can be effective in some cases. And I think even we could argue this fact, but I think some of our K-12 situations have been effective. Our teachers have made the transition well. And so, if we're truly going to prepare students for college, and if colleges are making this transition and they don't pivot completely back to where we were, do we need to then look at some virtual options for our kids as a requirement so that they are prepared to learn that way when they go to college? These are all conversations we have to have. It's all part of that whole transformation process moving forward. And how do we make sure our kids are future ready when they go to college and go to the workforce? And once again, we can't define that today, because there's no way we can define what the workforce is going to look like in 5 or 10 years. But it goes back to that whole point of, we have to be flexible, we have to be adaptable and agile in our preparation, and prepare our kids to also have that same mindset moving forward.
Thank you. So we have a question from Lisa Simmons. She says, according to the Washington Post, now more than ever before, vocational programs are expected to train students in a skilled trade and to prepare them for a traditional college route also. Is there a need for more varied vocational technology components at CISD?
Well, to specifically answer that, I don't, until I get a chance to really survey our parents, our community, and our really our students on what their desires are, I don't know today if there's a true need. I will tell you, just in general, from a K-12 perspective, I would anticipate that there is a need, because as I mentioned earlier, not every student will go to college based on their own choices. However, our goal would be that we do prepare every child that if they choose to do so, then to go to college and be successful. So it very much goes back to her question, is that you have to prepare them in some respects for both. So how do we build in those career and technology programs that expose kids to a variety of options career-wise, that they can find those areas that they're passionate about? How do we continue to offer a variety of things that meet the needs of kids, that then when they get to that point of looking towards college, they can either pursue that as a career, or they can pursue other opportunities, whether it be certifications and those kind of things, to help build upon their knowledge base as they go out into the workforce. I've also seen a lot of kids, when you offer career and technology courses and they have those skills and they have those certifications, they can go out sometimes and work in those areas and help put themselves through college and do some things like that while you're, kind of that multi-layer approach to moving forward and gaining success. So all that to say, my goal would be that we offer a wide variety of opportunities for all of our kids so that they have a choice to pursue their passions. Now, with all that being said, the district I was just in, there was always a push to offer certain career and technology courses, and we would survey for those from our kids, and a lot of those courses would not make because we did not have the interest from our students and for those courses to make. So I think it's something we just have to look at. What are the desires of this community? What's the desire of the students here moving forward? I know a lot of our kids desire to go to four-year institutions and then on to other opportunities for further advancement academically. And so it's just, we've got to balance the need versus the resources that we have as a district to make those decisions moving forward. And I think, so I know, once again, I know you want a specific answer, but that's kind of my mindset right now around that question, is how we would approach it.
Thank you. This is a question from Hannah. When we talk about global leadership, an important piece of this is equipping our children. Oh my gosh, wait, the question disappeared. Okay, here we go. I got it back. When we talk about global leadership, an important piece of this is equipping our children with foreign language skills. What is your position on introducing foreign language in elementary schools in the district?
So my position, I guess, from a philosophical standpoint, would be that absolutely. I think students, I think it's been proven that the acquisition of language at the earlier ages it's a lot easier to do at the earlier ages. I mean, students tend to do that, and so I would love to look at that as a possibility. However, it kind of goes back to in balancing the expectations from a state standpoint with our Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills and what has to be taught at the elementary level in terms of the time that we have on our campuses with our teachers. And so, I would say from a teacher perspective right now, the thought of freeing up time to teach a foreign language in the midst of what they already have to teach would be a challenge. So I think it's a kind of a systemic issue in terms of how can we work through that and offer that, because I agree it is an important aspect of global leadership. How do we work through that and offer it, and at the same time not jeopardize what we are expected to teach our students now, because the expectations are really in some respects overwhelming for our teachers with all that they have to get through in a school year. And so they feel the pressure of getting through that. So it would be a challenge to integrate that into our elementary schools. If we can find a way to do that, and I think some other districts have done that with some additional minutes under their day, those are things we could look at. Of course, there's a lot of things you have to consider with resources too, because obviously you'd have to have teachers at that level that can then teach the foreign language. So that's a resource concern in times of really a limited amount of resources for school districts. So managing all of that in the midst of even some of the other questions that have been asked with programs and things we can implement, it comes down to prioritizing what the desires of this community are, what the expectations are, and then what can we feasibly do within the resources that we have available. So all of these are great ideas, and I think we would love to do all of them if we had an infinite amount of money and teachers and time to do that. So really, I think it all goes back, and I know you're probably don't want me to continue saying this, but it really goes back to developing that strategic plan in concert with this community, our staff, and our parents and our students to determine what are the priorities for Carroll ISD moving forward. If that comes out as a #1 priority for our district, then we need to find a way to make that happen. If that's something that we want to work toward in the future, then that's something we put on our list of things that we move forward in the next few years. So I think all of those will be conversations that we have moving forward.
Thank you. And then we have a last question here from the audience, Dr. Ledbetter. This is from Donna James Harvey. She wrote, I once heard a Fortune 10 CEO say that when faced with difficult decisions, he listens to all sides, but then goes into a private setting and makes the decision. After hearing all sides, how do you make a final decision? Do you have your own methodology for making difficult decisions? And if so, what are they?
So I would consider myself, and I think through today and what I've said in previous weeks, I hope you understand that I'm going to listen and I value everyone's opinion. At the end of the day, certainly I am ultimately the one that has to make some difficult decisions, and not everyone is going to agree. Not everyone has a variety of perspectives. I think it does come down to very much what you said. I don't know that I can be as specific as that individual of what he or she does, but certainly once you gather the input, then you have to make a decision based on ultimately in this profession what's best for kids. And that determination has to be made with me and a few close advisors. I generally have people around me that I trust and respect and value their opinions. And so we will definitely collaborate and talk through, but ultimately it has to come down to what's best for the students in Carroll ISD. And let me be clear, it's best for all students. It's best for the whole as a district, whether it's a campus or all students pre-K through 12. And a lot of times in this position, you make decisions, or I'm able to make decisions in partnership with others that we feel like are best for all students. But sometimes there's not everyone would be considered necessarily winners in those decisions either. Not always going to get what you want. You're not always going to get the decision that you want, but ultimately I have to make the decision that I feel like is best for the 8,400 plus students in Carroll ISD. And so I would say that it's, like I said, very collaborative, input, and then ultimately have to make that final decision. I also want to make very clear that from a decision-making standpoint, in those situations where we can gather input, that's the best way. We've got to value everyone's perspectives and make those decisions. At the same time, there's a lot of decisions that have to be made in this position that you don't have the luxury of time. You don't have the luxury of bringing everyone together and making a decision. So ultimately, there are times, probably daily, that I have to make decisions that just are based on experience, based on what I believe is best for kids, and we'll make those decisions. So I just, I ask the community to understand that and be patient with us. And I have to make the best decisions that I believe are best for this district and best for all kids. And that's what I'm going to do. And I believe that's what the Board of Trustees hired me to do. And, like everything, not everyone is going to agree with every decision. But what I want everyone to understand is that I'm going to do what I believe is best for all students in Carroll ISD.
Dr. Ledbetter, we are almost done with our time here. We've gotten a lot of questions, and unfortunately, we are running out of time. We want to make sure we honor your time, and I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I think we had a lot of people join in, a lot of good questions, and again, I want to apologize. We weren't able to answer every one of them. I hope this was as informative for all of you as it was for us. And I'm sure, I hope you will come back again to answer some of our questions. So we'll keep these conversations going, and thank you all for being here. And on behalf of Kieran, the Southlake Foundation, we want to thank you again for being here. Thank you, audience, for being here. And we'll keep the conversation going. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you.